Well, thank you so much, Steve, for joining us today. I am Philippa Druce, and I'm part of the training specialist officer within Back to Work. And I wanted to meet with Steve today to find out a bit more about Steve's role within the care sector, and to find out a bit more about his role and the sort of training that Steve received in terms of progressing his career. So thank you for joining us. And as you know, we do have our industry care training within Back to Work. So we offer that to customers so that they can complete their care training, have some practical experience within the placement, and then sort of hopefully then progress into a healthcare assistant role. So how did you start your career in care, Steve?
Well, originally I was unemployed. I came here to Back to Work to basically start my career. I knew that I wanted to go into care because my brother's paraplegic, so I did look after him whilst I wasn't working full time. So I did the Back to Work through yourselves. This was about 5 years ago, I believe, maybe 7, can't remember exactly. But it was going through Palm Springs at the time.
Okay.
So
yes.
I know back then, so we did I think it was 8 weeks training. So a lot of it was in-house, and then you go on placement, which is what I did. And then you did passport to care.
That's right, yes, it was called Passport to Care.
Yeah, basically it's a stepping stone to get into the industry. So basically that was a qualification you had to have before you could go beyond.
And did you find that significantly helped you with getting into a care sector role, having done the training and the placement?
A little bit. I mean, a lot of the stuff we did on the passport to care, I was already doing with my brother.
Of course, yes.
Like the personal care and all that stuff. So it was, I wouldn't say it was mediocre, but it was below the level that I was already at. But I needed that qualification to get where I wanted to be.
So it sort of helped to open that door for you to progress
considerably.
further.
Yeah.
Excellent. And so when you talk about the type of training you received, what type of training did it cover? In terms of
we did food safety, hygiene, infection control, safe handling using hoists and slings, manoeuvring people that are in beds. So you basically going to put your back out, safe handling and everything. We did the basic life support, so first aid. What else did we do? A lot of it was theory work as well. So we did a lot of training in class.
And then obviously more of the practical elements of going into the placement and being able to learn that sort of hands-on within Palm Springs. That's great. And sort of when you first got your first job as a healthcare assistant after completing the training, sort of how long was it before you then were able to progress into a senior role?
When I'd actually qualified through the passport to care, I then joined a company with Tutela. I was a support worker / HCA, where I was supporting individuals with learning disabilities, so people on the spectrum like autism and stuff like that. From there, it took a while to actually get placed on an RQF level 2, which is the next stepping stone after passport to care. I think it was about 2 years after that originally, which it should have been a lot sooner.
Okay.
I then joined Orchid Care. They placed me on the RQF level 2 straight away. I completed that in about 6 months, and then I think I had to wait another 3 months before I could start my RQF level 3. Because originally when I'd already done nearly 3 years doing the work I'm doing now, so I was already doing a senior role at Orchid Care, even though I hadn't actually qualified as a RQF yet.
Okay. Yeah,
so they wanted me to go onto an RQF level 3 straight off the bat, but they wouldn't allow it at the education centre, so I had to go through RQF level 2, and then I think 3 months later I paid for the RQF level 3 myself, and I got that completed within a few months.
So it was sort of, so there was a little bit of a sort of time period that it took in order to get to that level 3.
That's pretty normal, although I know with JCC now, you have within 2 years of having a placement, you do have to be qualified. You have to be put on a course of like an RQF within 2 years. That's basically their standards now for looking after people. So you know if you do join a company, they have within that time frame to have you qualified.
So that's really helpful to be able to map that out and to, for one person to know sort of what the time frame is for them to complete that. And in terms of the aspects that you enjoy the most around care, obviously you talked a little bit about caring for a brother, and that was your first kind of initial understanding of what care is and sort of what the requirements are. What aspects do you enjoy most about your current role within care?
Usually just seeing the enjoyment on the people that I work with. A lot that like before I had a bit of a break between learning disabilities. I then went into mental health, so I work with a lot of elderly people with dementia, and working with them and understanding that they're going through dementia and they forget things. But then like, I worked with somebody who was ex-military, and I could say to him service number, and straight off the top of his head he could give me the service number, and then he could tell me all these stories of what he did in the military.
Wow.
But then if you ask anything else, he would have forgotten it.
And that must be really frustrating for them, isn't it?
It is, but it's the fact that you can make their day feel good. You're there to support them and live a healthy, the best balanced life they can have.
And so would you say that it's very rewarding to work within care?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you can have your hard days as well as your good days, but the good days far outweigh the hard ones. And so long as you've got a good team and support around you, it's enjoyable.
Well, that's really encouraging to know. And if you were to give advice to anyone who wants to perhaps start their own career within care, what kind of advice would you give them?
Have an open mind. If you're squeamish, that's something you're going to get over very quickly, or not. Personal care, you could be dealing with anything from regurgitation to feces, incontinence, but obviously wearing all the correct PPE, it's just part of the job. But that's probably the hardest part of the job. I mean, everything else, like taking people out for trips and spending time with them, helping them around the house, watching TV, listening to their stories. You're basically there as a companion, mainly, to support and educate.
And I guess it can also depend on the type of sort of client that you're working with. So not all would necessarily need personal care, but obviously probably quite a few would, depending on what their needs are.
Yeah, I mean, every single person that you support would have an individual care plan based around them. So it'd be a personal care plan. So you basically play to their strengths. So and you'd always encourage them to do something for themselves. Like the people that I've worked with dementia, people assume that they can't do things for themselves, but if you encourage them and say, come on, you wipe yourself, they will do it. Then that's one thing you don't have to do.
Yes.
So long as they're doing it correctly. But then it gives them, I'm trying to think of the word now.
Dignity, I guess, isn't it, in terms of...
Yeah, totally forgot the word.
It's okay.
No, it's gone. It's out of my head.
That's fine, and but those are all really important things for people to understand. The level of care that might be required, depending on which customers they are going to be looking after, and sort of how that might be in terms of working in a care environment. And where do you see your career developing from here?
I am a union rep for the Royal College for Nursing, a learner rep. So I've got that to look forward to and continue, and I'm going to be transferring from Learning Disability Service to the Children's Service very shortly.
That's fantastic, and it's great to hear about your journey in terms of where you started at and how you progressed that over a number of years to where you are today, and you still find the job really rewarding years later. And obviously I think it's so much needed within the island because we do have a very ageing population. There is a demand for healthcare assistant roles, and especially I think on the male sort of carer side, lots of female people naturally sort of want to go into a care environment, but I think there is also a great need to have more male people going into the industry. Would you agree with that? Or?
I mean, if you look at support workers slash HCAs within the community, the majority of them are men.
Okay.
In the residential homes and the care homes, majority of them are women. So I think it's one of those toss-ups. You've got a lot of women that work in the care homes, and you've got a lot of men that work in the community. So, but it's a good balance.
Well, that's really interesting to know that, because I wasn't aware of that. So that's really helpful. And we've just run a care course where we've had some customers that have completed the care course, and many of them are now going into their placement. And it's great to see them being able to launch their career as you did yourself and to start that journey. And we'll be looking to run another care course in September time this year. And well, thank you so much, Steve, for joining us today, and really great to hear about your success and how you achieved that. And it will definitely sort of be really helpful for other people who are interested in care to be able to listen to your journey and sort of be able to think about how they can sort of start off and progress themselves within the care sector.
Thank you for having me.